Did you know there's a place on Earth where the dead don't fully leave, where silence is so heavy it feels like pressure on your ribs? From far away, Everest looks clean, almost gentle in its stillness. A white pyramid pinned to a sky so thin it seems unreal, like someone took a perfect photo and forgot to add noise or flaws. But close up, Everest is not a place you visit. It's a place that visits you. It gets into your lungs, your blood, your thoughts, and the old parts of your brain that still believe in omens, still listen for footsteps behind you in the dark, still feel watched when nothing is there. Because Everest isn't just a mountain, it's a boundary, a line where the human world ends and something colder begins. People call it the roof of the world, but that phrase is too polite. Everest is more like the world's edge, where the air becomes a rumor, where time gets distorted, where your mind starts to bargain with your body, and your body starts to whisper back, not with comfort, but with ultimatums. Up there, above roughly 8,000 meters, about 26 feet, there's a zone climbers speak about the way sailors used to speak about the Bermuda Triangle, with a half smile that tries to hide a tremor. They call it the death zone, not because it sounds dramatic, because it's accurate. In the death zone, the air holds so little oxygen that your body begins to die, by default, like a phone draining battery, even when you're not touching it. You're not getting tired. You are slowly shutting down. Your brain swells. Your blood thickens. Your fingers and toes become distant strangers. Your judgment unravels. Your emotions snap like brittle rope. And the most terrifying part is that you might not notice any of it happening, because Everest doesn't always kill you loudly. Sometimes it kills you softly, by convincing you that you're fine, by letting you keep walking, just long enough to make the wrong decision. People go to Everest for reasons they can explain to friends, to family, to cameras: achievement, ambition, legacy, the highest point on Earth, the ultimate summit photo, the proof that your life is bigger than your doubts. But ask climbers in quieter moments, when they're not trying to be brave, when the oxygen mask is off, and the night is too dark and too long, and you'll hear other reasons. They talk about a pull, a feeling that Everest is calling them, like the mountain is not an object, but a presence. And when enough people say something like that, you start to wonder whether it's metaphor or memory, because Everest has a history older than any climber, older than any flag planted on its summit, older than any documentary you've watched. For a long time, people didn't climb Everest at all. They respected it, they feared it. They left it alone, the way you leave alone a lake you're told is bottomless. But modern obsession has a way of rewriting reverence into challenge. In the early 20th century, explorers began to look at Everest with a new kind of hunger, not the hunger of survival, the hunger of conquest, the idea that if something is high, remote, and dangerous, then it must also be waiting for you to prove yourself against it. And that's how Everest became less of a goddess and more of a trophy. Yet, trophies have a cost, and on Everest, the cost is paid in breath, in frostbite, in decisions made with a brain running on fumes, in footsteps that don't return, and in bodies that remain where they fell, because the mountain is so cold and so steep that rescue becomes almost impossible, and retrieving the dead becomes a risk the living can't always justify. So, the dead stay. And if you climb high enough, you will pass them. That's not a rumor, that's the route. You'll be moving in slow motion, clipped into fixed ropes, your breaths ragged through plastic and valves, your eyelashes crusted with ice, your vision narrowed to the next boot print. And then you'll see something on the side of the slope, a shape that is too still, a color that doesn't match the snow, a jacket faded by sun and time, partially buried, as if the mountain is trying, slowly, patiently to swallow the evidence. Sometimes the bodies have names that become legends, turned into grim landmarks because they are the only landmarks that don't move. A marker of altitude, a warning you can't ignore, a reminder that the route is not a heroic path. It's a corridor between death and the illusion of control. And in that corridor, something strange happens to the living. Because Everest doesn't just test your strength, it tests your mind. At altitude, your brain becomes unreliable, like a narrator who starts lying halfway through the story. People hallucinate. They hear voices. They see figures in the snow. They become convinced they're walking on a path that isn't there. They forget steps they've done 1,000 times. They take off gloves because their hands feel hot, even as frostbite gnaws at them like an animal. They sit down for just a second, and that second becomes the last thing they ever do. There are stories, whispered stories, told in base camps and mountain lodges, traded like superstitions, that climbers have met someone up there, someone who should not be there, a silhouette behind them in a whiteout, footprints that appear beside theirs, matching stride for stride. A voice through the wind that sounds too clear to be wind. Some climbers call it the third man phenomenon, an unseen companion reported by people near death, a presence that guides them, comforts them, keeps them moving when everything in their body screams to stop. Some say it's the brain's last survival trick. Some say it's a spirit. Some say it's Everest itself, letting you borrow strength. But borrowing implies repayment, and Everest always collects. Even if you don't die on the mountain, you might leave part of yourself behind. Your confidence, your innocence, your belief that nature is neutral. Because up there, you learn the uncomfortable truth. Everest is indifferent to your dreams, and your dreams don't make you special. It doesn't matter if you're rich or poor, famous or unknown, experienced or well-guided. The mountain doesn't care. And that's what makes it so terrifying. We like threats with faces, villains with motives, dangers we can understand. Everest offers none of that. It simply exists. And if you step into its highest realm, it changes the rules without telling you. But the darkness surrounding Everest isn't only in the ice and thin air. It's also down lower, in the crowds, the business, the desperation. Because Everest has become a place where people buy a chance at immortality, and sometimes they buy it with money they don't have, with promises to families they can't keep, with confidence fueled by marketing instead of reality. And when too many people chase the summit at once, the mountain turns into something even more surreal. A line, a waiting room at the edge of space. Imagine it. You've trained for years, spent everything, traveled across the world, watched friends turn back, watched storms tear through camp like a living thing, endured cold that feels like it's biting your bones. And then you reach the final ridge and you see other climbers ahead of you, standing still, clipped into a rope like ornaments on a wire. A traffic jam at 29,000 feet. Above you, the summit. Below you, a drop so vast your mind refuses to measure it. And around you, nothing but wind and sky and the thin, desperate sound of breathing. You can't pass easily. You can't rest. You can't waste oxygen. So you wait. And waiting up there is not neutral. Waiting is dying slowly. Every second is a leak in the hourglass. The air is stealing you. The cold is taking your hands. The sun is burning your skin through the thin atmosphere. Your body is screaming, quietly at first, and then louder, and then suddenly, sometimes, your body goes quiet, as if it has accepted the outcome before your mind can. This is where Everest becomes truly sinister. It forces moral choices in a place where morality is harder to carry than gear. There are moments, documented and real, where climbers have passed others who were in trouble, because stopping might mean death for both. There are moments where someone is alive when you see them, and dead when you look back. There are moments where the mountain turns people into calculus. If I help, I die. If I don't, I live. And afterward, whichever choice you make becomes a shadow that follows you down. If you ever watch footage from high on Everest, pay attention to the sound, not the music, not the narration, the raw sound. The wind is constant, yes, but sometimes there's something in it, an eerie rhythm, a hollow tone, a wavering pitch that can feel almost like speech if you listen too long. And maybe that's why climbers talk about hearing voices, because when you're on the boundary between life and death, your brain starts searching for meaning in noise. Or maybe the mountain has always been speaking, and we only hear it when we're weak enough to listen. So, the next time you see Everest in a photo, beautiful, distant, calm, remember that you're looking at the same mountain that has watched generations of humans climb toward it with hope in their eyes and frost on their lashes. Remember that in its coldest places, time moves differently. Remember that the mountain doesn't rush. It doesn't need to. It has all the time in the world. And if you ever find yourself standing on its slopes, hearing the wind tighten and deepen around you, like a voice lowering to a whisper, you might realize the most frightening thing about Everest isn't that you could die up there. It's that the mountain might not even notice when you do. And somewhere in that endless white, where the sky begins to darken and the world becomes quiet enough to hear your own thoughts unravel, you may feel it, an ancient patience pressing against your back, as if the mountain is leaning in, waiting for you to stop moving. Subscribe to Chapter After Midnight for more deep dive into history's most enigmatic cases.